Hi everyone, is anyone there? If you guys are there, just give me a hi in the chat. Oh, hi Kira. Hi Lavina. Okay. I'm not sure if I can see the number of people who are live right now. Let's wait for another minute or two and then we can begin. Perfect. Can you guys hear me properly? Perfect. Okay, so let me just start with like a few things in terms of the software. This is pretty new for me too, so I'm gonna see if it works perfectly today. So you guys know about the chat box. So if use that chat box pretty freely to tell me more about yourself, or if you guys have any questions, or if you want to comment on something, maybe a thumbs up or anything. Just use that chat box for like your thoughts and everything. And then at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a button which says ask a question. So you guys can use that for asking a question, and then I can answer it, and it can kind of attach the timing. So whenever someone is coming back to look at it, people can see particular questions and my answers to it. And one more thing is that if you guys, like when we start drawing and everything, and you guys want to share your artwork or kind of ask me a question by showing me something, let me know and I can invite you to share your camera so that we can see the camera properly. Okay. So just gonna, I guess, wait for a minute more. Or maybe everyone's here, I think. Okay. So I'm Nishita. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself earlier, but I'm Nishita. I am a mandala artist, and I'm gonna be hosting today's beginners mandala session, and I'm very excited about today. So I hope you guys have a lot of fun with me, and maybe we can create some new things today. So before we jump into the drawing part, I'm gonna do a little 10 to 15 minutes of a presentation covering the background, the cultural significance, and the topic of cultural appreciation and appropriation in terms of mandalas. And after that, and we will jump into the basics of drawing a mandala and then adding more details and patterns and everything. So I'm just gonna share the presentation here through my screen. Okay. Are you guys able to see the presentation okay? Is the size okay, or is that too small? I'm not sure how it, okay. Perfect. So let's start. You might see me looking towards the side once in a while. I just have my things to kind of cover on the side, so just making sure that I'm not missing out on anything in terms of covering. So yeah, let's start. I'm Nishita, like I said. I'm going to go over a few things in this presentation. This is just the agenda. So let's start with a little something about me. So I grew up in India, and I moved here to Canada about 8 years ago. And I did my university here. I just graduated and got a certification to become a practicing radiation therapist. So that's been happening for a while. And along with that, I've been practicing mandalas for the past 5 years. So as a kid, I've always been very creative, and I remember my summers practically being spent in front of the TV while I was drawing something or crafting something. So that hobby became a passion eventually, and then it kind of translated to what I'm doing right now. I remember being introduced to Zentangles by my grade 12 art teacher, and that's where I kind of found my love for patterns, and eventually I started exploring more and found mandalas. And I realized that I'd seen these patterns all my life in terms of rangolis and henna designs. But this is when I was kind of formally introduced to the art of mandalas. I instantly fell in love with it. And since I was not the kind of person who would sit still while meditating, this became a form of meditation for me. It became a form of outlet in terms of expressing my emotions. And which is why I'm here to share it with you guys today. And I hope that it becomes a part of your life, and it is as fun as it has been for me. So let's dive into the whole background into it. So what are mandalas? So mandala is a Sanskrit word, and it literally means a circle. Mandalas mean a circle, and it is a geometrical structure that has a focal point, and the focal point is surrounded by symbols and structures that kind of represent something. Now, it originated in the spiritual practices of Hinduism and Buddhism, and it was and is still used widely as a tool of meditation, as a tool of worship in a lot of ritual practices. So spiritually, it represents the universe and the components of the universe. So what that does is basically, when we're drawing mandalas or when we're practicing, let's say coloring for that matter, we're stepping out into the representation of the universe around us, and as well as the universe within us. Like, this is the way we kind of connect to the spirituality and the emotional side of us, and it helps us to basically make that connection. So like, a way I like to think about it is that it kind of helps us create this sacred space, not just physically, but mentally as well, where we can process our emotions and convert those feelings of anxiety or feelings of uncertainties into feelings of joy or happiness, or kind of focus on the joys and happiness that already exist in our lives. So yeah, so that's basically the story or the significance behind the mandalas, and they come in like various shapes and forms. You can you can draw various shapes, or you can draw it in and represent various things. But I'm going to discuss here two main mandalas that hold a very religious meaning behind them. So first one here is the Sri Yantra, or the NAVCHAKRA. It's a mandala that has a very important significance in Hinduism, and it loosely translates into a tool of worship, and which is what it is used for. It's used for worshiping different deities in regular ritual practices. So there are different components to each and every mandala. And for this mandala, the first component, or one of the most important components, is that single dot in the middle, which basically is called a bindu, and it represents the various origins, or it could mean a single origin, or the various origins that we have in the universe. The triangles around it, so there are 9 triangles in there of different sizes, which make up 43 smaller triangles, and they represent the different components of the universe, so including us, other people around us, other things around us, other animals around us, so everything that kind of encompasses a universe. There are 2 rings of lotus around that. The first one has 8 petals, and the second one has 16 petals, and those are very specific to that particular mandala, and those represent the importance of reproduction and growth in our lives. So the last layer for this mandala is the square layer with the 4 gates. Now this square is basically the temple where we have the deity or the universe that we are worshiping or representing this mandala for. And it kind of symbolizes that when we're drawing mandalas, or when we're practicing mandalas, we're stepping into this new world, or a different world, where we are asking for change. So that's the Sri Yantra, and it's called the NAVCHAKRA, which means 9 chakras, because it has 9 layers to it. Moving on, the second types of mandalas I wanted to talk about were the Tibetan sand mandalas. Now these mandalas, I find them so beautiful, but these mandalas are made by Buddhist monks with colored sand, and it takes them days to make these mandalas. So each mandala that they make is basically a worship or a prayer to a different type or a different form of Buddha. And whenever they're making a mandala for that form of Buddha, that Buddha is placed in the center of the mandala. And then you will see a lotus around them, which contains different components of the temple, or different forms of Buddha around it that they're also representing through this. And then there's the familiar temple shape with the 4 gates, which basically designates the I would say the palace or the temple of the deity. And then around that are the different aspects of the universe, or different components of the universe. And they're very minute, they're very detailed, and I feel like I could look at them for days. So these take them a long time to make, and while they're making it, they're basically praying as they're going and blessing each and every sand particle. And at the end of this, when they finish it, they worship the deity for a few days after they finish making the mandalas, and then they have a disintegrating ritual or a ceremony at the end of all of this. In that ceremony, while they're praying and while they're chanting, they're disintegrating the mandala, each almost like a line by line basis. And while they're doing that, they're paying respect, or or signifying that life is very impermanent, and us as human beings shouldn't be attached to the material things in life, and we should be aware of the fact that at the end of the day, we're all gonna become we're all gonna disintegrate into the components that we're made of. I find that very beautiful. And then another kind of ritual that's associated with this practice is that once they're done disintegrating the whole mandala, they take those sand particles and pour it into a flowing river, which takes these sand particles into the ocean. And the ocean transports all of these sand particles that have been blessed to all these different shores around the world. So it kind of says that the blessings that the Buddhist monks have put into these sand particles reaches all the different parts of the world. And like, what other way to kind of say that we're all connected in some way, right? Like, I feel like that's one of the most beautiful ways to say that. So moving on, let's just quickly discuss kind of the association between meditation and mandalas. So before I dive into something, I want to ask you guys, what are the first things that pop into your mind when I say meditation? Just type me the first things that come to your mind in the chat box and see what people are thinking. So personally, the things that come to my mind when I'm thinking of, calm. The things that are coming to my mind when I'm thinking of meditation is breathing or yoga. Like, that's the more popular belief of meditation, where you're like, oh, yoga gives me peace, or breathing exercises are the one that is associated with meditation. And the practice of mandala also has parallels with that. For example, when we're drawing, each and every shape or each and every line that we're doing, we're so mindful of the fact that we're so mindful of our breathing that we're trying not to kind of disturb our hand muscles or move our hand in a way where we will mess up the pattern. And what that does is that eventually our mind learns to facilitate that connection between the repetitive pattern, the repetitive motion of the hand while we're drawing with the breathing. And so through that, after a certain point of practice, we reach this sense of the state of mind, which I like to call the flow state, where we are so aware of the present that our mind completely calms down and we're able to process things that we might not be able to process when we're like living our daily lives. And I feel like that is one of the main things of practicing mandalas, and that's what it was meant for. Like, mandalas are a tool for meditation, and it very magically does that purpose. It serves that purpose. So personally, I've been practicing this for about 5 years, and I couldn't emphasize enough how much it has done for me in terms of just my mental health, but also in terms of the skill that I've been developing and how that has had an impact on a lot of aspects in my life. And hopefully after today's session, I would encourage you guys to kind of incorporate that into your own lives and see how that makes a difference to you. Okay, so yeah, before we jump into the whole starting the practice of mandala, just wanted to discuss this topic of cultural appropriation. So between these two pictures, which picture do you think is not culturally appropriate or representing cultural appropriation? Yes. So yes, Ananya said first. So yes, I think that the first one is a very accurate representation of cultural appropriation. A turban is something that in Sikh religion has a lot of meaning, a lot of positive messages, a lot of cultural significance and religious significance. And in the first picture, the individual has taken it out of context and basically made it an accessory or a fashion element. And that, I feel, is very disrespectful to the culture or to the religious beliefs that are associated with it. Versus in the second picture, the person who might not belong to the same religion or the same culture is, in a way, like he's representing the turban, but because he's in this picture, he's getting married into a religious or Sikh family, he has understood the meaning behind it, the significance or the beliefs behind it, and then very in a respectful manner representing it, which I feel is basically the line that is between cultural appreciation and appropriation, the line of respect. Like whenever you learn something from a different culture, you need to be mindful of the fact that you're respectful to them and you give them credit. So to kind of bring that back into perspective in terms of mandalas, I would like to give you guys a quick example of what I think is an example of cultural appropriation. So let's say like two people come to me and tell me that they want to get mandala tattoos. So one of them comes up to me and says that, oh, they've like recently started practicing mandalas and they've had a lot of benefits in terms of the mindfulness and in terms of the meditative properties of mandalas, and they fall in love with it and they really, really, really want to get this tattoo of a mandala, which they've designed themselves and has components and has shapes and symbols which mean something to them. And they want to put this as a tattoo on their body. Now, traditionally, mandalas are not used as a tattoo, but they do have the religious significance of them being meditative tools. Now, on the other hand, the other person comes up to me and tells me that they basically bring me a picture of, let's say, the Tibetan sand mandala or the picture of the Sri Yantra, and tell me that, oh, the design's really cool. Oh, or like, oh, I love the pattern. Maybe like it would look good on this part of my body. What do you guys think? Like, which one of them is not appropriate? So I think that the second one is not appropriate because they've completely taken the mandala out of context. Like they've not understood where it's coming from. They've not understood what the significance of it is, what the whole point behind a mandala is. And all they really have boiled it down to is a bunch of lines or a bunch of pattern. And I feel like in that statement, they're not respecting the culture and they're not respecting the symbol itself. So to kind of just be mindful of the fact that we ask questions to people who are actually knowledgeable about the culture or knowledgeable about the symbol that we're talking about, we listen and understand from them and see what the significance is or what the story behind that is. And then the most important thing is to respect it, to respectfully understand it and also respectfully represent it. And then also be mindful of the fact that information coming from one person cannot sometimes might not be accurate. So we're always willing to learn more and continue learning. So keep an open mind and see where all the new information is coming from, basically, and then make a decision, an informed decision to use a symbol or use a religious fabric or anything that basically has a very important part in a religion or a culture. Do you guys have anything that you guys would like to say in terms of this topic? I know there's a million views out there, and we kind of need to respect that everyone has a view that's coming from a place that they've experienced, and we need to be respectful of that when we're talking about this. So any questions so far in terms of the significance or the topic? Okay, so let's move on to the fun part. So quick tips before we start drawing. Now, if you are new to drawing, I would say start drawing with a pencil. That kind of takes away that burden of drawing with a pen, and then you're less nervous to mess up. avoid fraying. So when I say fraying, this is what I mean. Like some people have a tendency to draw like this. So try to avoid that. That will just basically make the lines more inaccurate. But if you do need to do that, do it. But do it with a pencil. If you're drawing with a pen, try not to fray. Be gentle with your pencil. Don't kind of stab your paper with the pencil, just so that you're not, like when you're done the mandala with a pen and you want to kind of erase the lines, it's easier to erase and it will be like a clean piece of paper. Another important one is complete the lines. Like if you draw shapes and if you, let's say, like drew this and then there was a line at the bottom of it, try to kind of join those lines and not leave it hanging. That just kind of makes the whole drawing look a little bit more clean and more precise. And at the end of the day, this is a practice. This is something to kind of aid your meditation. So don't worry to mess up. The most beautiful part of like drawing mandalas or drawing these patterns is that there's no way you're gonna mess it up. Like there's always a problem-solving solution to it. Or I personally think that if you repeat it enough times, it kind of like the imperfections kind of just get hidden, or you can't even see it. Like you can't see like if you mess it up somewhere. And also like mandalas are not supposed to be perfect. There's like the imperfections are kind of what makes it perfect. So don't worry about messing it up and just enjoy the whole process. Okay, so the first thing that we kind of go over in terms of drawing the basics is the grid that we're gonna make. So here I have, so if you have, like, gather all your your resources in terms of your pens, your pencils, your paper. And if you guys are ready, we can go ahead with the whole thing. Just leave me a thumbs up if everyone's kind of ready, and then we can move on. I just want, like, everyone's gonna take their own time, but if we're in a similar pace, it will just be easier for everyone. Okay, I'm guessing everyone's still trying to get their sources. Okay, Matthias is ready. Matthews, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. Lavina's ready. Oh, hi, Caitlin. Caitlin's ready. It's nice to kind of know all of your names. It's easier for me to interact that way. Okay. I'm guessing other people are just who kind of don't want to say anything. Okay. So the first thing that we do in terms of a mandala is that we find the center of our page. So what I want you guys to do is, and Nya's ready too. So what I want you guys to do is divide the length of the page in half and the breadth of the page in half. So you measure the length, put a dot in the middle of it, or this is me struggling with finding a point of finding the right side of the ruler. So yeah, mark the ruler, put a point in the center of the page. You do the same thing at the bottom. You measure the length, you put it at the center, and then connect those two dots to make that line. That will divide your paper lengthwise halfway. And then you do the same thing with the breadth. So you measure it, put a point on the half, and do it on the other side. If any of you guys are running into problems or have any questions, please let me know. Hopefully this process, like the video, is helping. So basically, once you have those lines intersected, that's where the point of the focal point of the mandala is going to be. So that's where you're going to start the mandala making from. I'll give everyone a minute more to kind of finish this step, and then we can move ahead. If you guys are done, leave me a thumbs up. I've tried to record these videos just to kind of make the whole angle easier for you, because it's kind of hard to coordinate the whole laptop angle with me drawing. So there'll be some struggle in terms of drawing the designs, because I don't have those recorded for actually drawing the designs. But for making the grid, I hope this is helpful. Okay, so let's move on to the next step. So once you find your center, now we're going to determine the radial points. So we're basically going to measure the points at which we want to make our circles, and that circles will help us basically keep our design a little more, what's the word? A little more precise. So in this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 5 circles. So from the center, I've basically measured out 2 centimeters. So starting from the center, I measured 2 centimeters, then 2 centimeters after the first point, then 2 centimeters after the first point. So until I have 5 points and a total of 10 centimeters between the center and the last point. Does that make sense to everyone? Perfect. Let's take a minute more to kind of go over that process, to finish that process, and then we can move on to the next step. I can repeat that video if anyone wants to see the whole process again. This is the technical part of it. The fun part of it kind of comes after we're done making this grid and move on to the whole pattern part of it. But I honestly love this part as well. Like, I'm a big math person, and I love like making these geometrical shapes and measuring things out, and it's pretty fun. This part is pretty fun as well, and meditative for me, I would say. So let's move on to the next one. So in this one, we're basically going to make circles at those points that we made. So we're going to make 5 circles. I started from the biggest one, and then I worked my way inside, but you could do the other way as well. Like, you could work from the smallest circle and then work kind of way out of it. So while I was drawing the biggest circle, I used the hard method, is what they say when we're drawing circles. Like, I tried to move my wrists around in weird positions, and that did not work well. Like, I could not move it to certain angles, and I kept losing the circle. And so I instantly realized that I could just have turned the paper. which is what I started doing on the next 4 circles. I basically just turned the paper instead of turning my hands in weird positions. It's just easier when you have just a paper that you're dealing with. Sometimes I'm drawing in a book and technically can do that with a book, but like if you have a paper, take full advantage of it. Like turn your paper instead of your wrist just to save your hand a little. Yeah, so once you're done this step, you should end up with a total of 5 circles. Now this is something that kind of like a place of modification in terms of drawing mandalas later. You can modify each mandala by basically making a different sized grid. So instead of 2 centimeters that we took in this scenario, you could take distances of 1 centimeter or half a centimeter if you want to go like really detailed. Or if you want to make like a bigger piece, you could do probably more than 2 centimeters if you want to do. So this is where kind of we custom each and every mandala. So if even while drawing this, like if you decide to make more lines or less lines, that's okay as well. Whatever works for you should be fine. Okay, so I'm gonna play this quickly one more time, just to, in case anyone has missed anything or in case anyone wants to just kind of look at it one more time. I'll just skip to like in the middle. Just give a minute to everyone to kind of finish their circles. And if you guys are all done, just give me a thumbs up. I can move on if you if you're just like staring at me there. Because I know sometimes it's hard to like just get a hang of these tools. It's so hard to get pencils in them at some points. Okay, so let's move on to the next step. Now, once we have the circles, now we're going to determine the divisions in those circles that will give us more points to kind of work with. So in this one, what we're going to do is we're going to put the protractor on the middle line. Try to align your 0 and 180. So your 0 and 180 line to the horizontal line of the circle of the drawing. And then you're going to measure 30 degrees. So you're going to divide each quadrant into 3 parts. So you're going to put points every 30 degrees. And if you have those half ones, it would still work the same. Like you just put it on one half, do your points, and then just flip it and do on the other side. So if and when these tools are not available to you, like when I started practicing mandalas, I didn't have a lot of these tools. So what I used to do was I would just grab different plates and different kind of bottle caps and anything basically that was round, and find different sizes and then make concentric circles. Although they weren't like as straight as what these tools would make, but they would do the job. They would at least make it circle so I could use it as a guide when I'm drawing, and that would work fine as well. So if you don't have these tools, you don't have to worry about it. You just have to kind of find things around the house. Right now, you don't have to worry about it, but like if in future practice, if you don't have access to this, you just find round things and then kind of draw those circles. With those, I would say that kind of go from out to in so that you can actually estimate the center position, because if you go in to out, you won't be able to see the center. Okay, so I'm guessing everyone's done with this step. Moving on to the next step. Now we're gonna basically join those points that we made in the previous step. So you pick the points that are opposite to each other. Like you're basically picking opposite points and making sure that the center is passing through the line that you're making. And it should give you about 4 lines to draw. And in total, you should end up with 6 lines. So what this does is basically just kind of gives you a space that you can work in to make the shapes more consistent. So similar to like the round dishes, you can also use for the straight lines, you can also use like anything, basically like even another piece of paper, and that will, like, if you just place it on the paper that you're drawing on and draw a straight line, that will help you draw a straight line as well. So, and you can always draw mandala freehand. That is also a practice that is very helpful. So if you don't have the tools, don't worry, don't stress. It's okay. Like just try to kind of focus your attention on the drawing rather than all the technicalities of it. So I'll just give you guys 1 more minute to kind of finish this step. And if you guys are done, we can kind of get into the whole drawing the patterns and everything. Okay. So drawing the mandala. Now these are the basic shapes that we use. So we have the dots, the lines, a curved line, and like you can curve it even more, basically to your liking. You can curve the line as much as you want to make different shapes. Then we have the triangle, the 4 different types of petals. So the triangle petal, the I forgot the name for this one, but the curved petal, the rounded petal, and the pointed petal. So these are some of the usual petals that we use in different like construction of the mandalas. And then moving on, we've just basically kind of joined the triangle to make a diamond. And then similarly, we've joined we've flipped and mirrored the curved petal to make like an egg shape, like a pointed egg shape. And then the semicircle, the oval, the circle, the teardrop, the the usual stereotypical flower petal, and the spiral. So these are basically the basic shapes that you will need to draw any kind of mandala. And just repetitions of these shapes will basically help you finish the whole mandala. So I'm gonna stop this screen sharing and basically draw with you guys. This is also, I have a worksheet made, so I'll try to link it here somehow, and maybe you could use those to help you along the process, but I will also be drawing. So when we're drawing now, I would suggest that if you want, you can draw your own patterns. You can draw from these shapes. You can draw basically anything that you like. But if you want to follow along with me, just follow along with me. Like whatever works for you, you can do. So before we get into the whole pattern, I'm just going to keep my slide on basic shapes and show you kind of the backbone or the skeleton of the mandala. And then when we're going into the details, we can jump into the patterns. Can you guys see me even with the PowerPoint? Oh, okay. If I'm small, let me see if I can kind of share it equally. There. I feel like this way you could see me half and half. Okay, perfect. That's better. So I'm going to try to find a place where I can actually keep the piece and draw so you guys can see it as best. Okay, so this is the grid that I made. And I'm basically just gonna, so the first shape that I'm gonna take for the center of my mandala is the teardrop shape. So I'm basically just gonna fill it up in these compartments here. So hopefully you guys can see. Let's see if I kind of, the light. There. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is basically just make those teardrop petals here. And just continue making them until I fill up all the spaces in there. So when you're drawing lines, try, like, this is an example of fraying, but it's hard for me to draw at this angle, which is why I'm fraying here, just so that I can get the right shapes. But if you're drawing with a pen, there's no, like, I would say not to fray, because it'll just kind of make it more. Can you guys see the petals? So this is when you are drawing it with the pencil, like when you're drawing, when you are drawing it with the pen, just join it. So I have one that I've made here, so I'll keep kind of popping it in to kind of show you guys the. So here in the center, I've drawn these teardrops, which is what I was showing you guys. So when you draw it with a pen, just join them to the center and make sure that you don't have double lines in the center. It's just one line, and then you're doing like a C at the top. So once you guys are done this, I'll give you guys one more minute to kind of finish the circle, and then we can move on to the next pattern. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me those right now. I can answer those while we wait. If anyone wants to kind of check that what they're doing is okay, let me know. I can try to share your camera. So if you're drawing with a pencil, you should basically end up with something like this when you finish the innermost circle. Okay, let's move on to the next next circle, and we're going to draw the backbone for it. For that one, I'm going to use the curved petal. So that is the one below the triangle. So what I'm going to do is basically use this point as a reference point to where I'm going to put the tip. And then I'm going to make a curved line starting from here, like inside the petal, inside the teardrop, and then make a curved line so that it touches the point that we decided was the reference point. So that is 1/2 of the petal, and I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side to make it a full petal. So that's your curved line petal. We're just going to basically continue this for all the boxes. So where you finish the last petal is where you're going to start it and take it to the next reference point and draw the line accordingly. Now don't worry about it being different from the first one. Like I said, like it's okay if it's not all the same. Once you've drawn everything, the imperfections are what kind of make it look more appealing. And then you do the same thing. Oh, the light. And then you do the same thing with the other side. And then if you want to correct it, since you're drawing with a pencil, you have that benefit of correcting the shape if you need to. This is a hard angle for me to draw. And then do the same thing for the rest of the boxes. So while you're drawing, try to be more, I know it's hard to concentrate or like try to be more concentrate with like me speaking in the background, but try to be more mindful of the hand movements that you're doing, or notice your breathing. That you know how sometimes when you're drawing or when you're drawing that line, you unconsciously hold your breath so that you don't mess up your hand. So be conscious of that. Be conscious of the fact that you're kind of breathing in, holding it, and then breathing it out. So try that, like when you, right before you're drawing the line, breathe in, draw the line, and then breathe out. And if you kind of keep doing this, it will create that sense of awareness. It might be hard with me talking in the background, but if you're doing it at like your own personal time, it would be very calming. So let's give everyone a minute to kind of catch up on the circle. This is just the bottom one that there was no way I could move my wrist that way, so I'm just gonna finish it while placing it like this. So once you finish that layer, it should end up looking something like this. Now don't worry about these lines here. When we go over the whole drawing with a pen, we can practically like erase those lines off, and then it'll leave us with like a cleaner drawing. So moving on to the next step, now we're gonna attempt doing bigger shapes in this third circle over here, but with the same concept as the one that we did here. We're still gonna do the same shape, but we're just gonna do it bigger because the box we have here is bigger. So do the same thing. Take the tip of one of the petals, and your reference point is one of the dots at the top. And then you, starting from this petal, you're basically gonna do a curved line and join those 2 points. And that's half your petal, and you're gonna do the same thing and join these 2. You're just gonna go around and do the same thing, like join the top tip of the petal in the second row to the reference point in the third row. The tip of the petal, reference point on the third. Is everyone doing okay? Are the steps, like, are you guys able to understand the steps, or am I going too fast? Let me know if I'm going too fast. Perfect. Just gonna quickly finish those 2 petals because the next step is even more fun. I love this pattern, and I feel like it kind of gives that detail very easily. So after you're done this circle, what you're gonna do is basically do the same shape, but overlap it with like the petals that you just made. So what you're gonna do is start your petal from this point, and then your reference point is this point. So you're gonna connect this 2 with a curved line. So what you're doing is basically overlapping a petal on top of another petal, and then it kind of goes around the circle like that. So you take the point in the middle and then join it with the reference point at the top. And then finish that petal with on the other side. So I've seen that some people actually really enjoy the sound of drawing as well. like it's considered like an ASMR sound, someone drawing. The sound of a pencil kind of rubbing onto the paper, and I find that very interesting. Like it's a pretty interesting sound, and I'm glad like drawing has multiple purposes in terms of like having kind of a soothing nature. Like the drawing itself is very calming, and then when you look at it, for example, I have a mandala on the bedside table. So every single day when I wake up, I look at it, and although it's like I'm not doing the act of drawing, but every time when I look at it, it kind of gives me that moment of joy, even though it's just like a moment or like a few minutes when I'm looking at it, but it's that moment of joy that it gives me that I find very beautiful. Like even though you're not drawing it, just the fact that you're looking at it can also give you a lot of positive energies. So you should probably let me know if I'm going too slow too, you guys, because I'm trying not to go fast, but in that process I might have gone too slow. So if you guys are done this circle, let me know and I can move forward. So you should end up with something like this. I feel like this adds a lot of visual interest to the whole piece, like the whole overlapping pattern. It kind of makes it seem like there's more to it than just what meets the eye. So if everyone's done this step, let's move on to the next one. So the next one, we're going to use the pointed petal. So that's the one beside the petal that we just drew. It's the one beside the curved petal, which has a pointed edge at the top. So what we're going to do is basically, so this one is a little harder because you have to kind of create your own reference points. So what you want to do is basically just eyeball it, like in between these two. Try to find your center point. And an easier way to do it is to kind of just draw like an imaginary line from this point going out, and then you would find like a center point. It doesn't have to be like the exact center, but just try to find it as centered as possible. So just make an imaginary line from the, sorry, the light keeps shining on this thing. So yeah, like I was saying, just try to make an imaginary line from this point going outward, and that will give you the center point. So just make a mark there all around the circle. And then that is going to serve as your reference point for your petal, or the next petal. So for the next petal, what you want to do is you want to make a kind of an S, if you will. I don't know if you can see that clearly, but what you want to do is just start with like the big loop of the S, and then kind of just slowly going. I guess a swirl would be another way to kind of say it, but it's just a very elongated S. And that is one portion of your petal, and you're going to do this on the other side. It's usually harder to draw it on the other side because it's harder to get that same kind of bent. So just take your time with the second one. Like the first one is easier to draw, and then the second one is kind of harder to draw because you have to match the first one. And then you keep doing that for all the points. And don't worry, guys, if it's not like very exact. Like I said before, the whole point of this practice is that it helps to calm your mind. And the last thing I want this drawing to do is to kind of give you anxiety in terms of the lines being too crooked or anything. So just focus on how like drawing those lines makes you feel rather than are they perfect or not. And especially these petals, like they might take a lot of your energy just because it's harder to draw them, but these look really cool even when they're not symmetrical. So don't worry about it being way too symmetrical. So after you finish this, I'm not going to complete the whole thing because it's going to take me some time to do it. But if you guys are done this layer, then we can move on to the last layer of the skeleton, I would say. Okay, so the last layer, well, it's technically the second last layer, I would say, because we're still going to fill the gaps here. So what we're going to do is take that teardrop shape that we did in the middle and do the same thing with this. So our reference point is here, so we want to end our teardrop here and then start it at this intersection of these petals. So just want to make sure that your teardrop is not overlapping with this petal. You want to take it just so that you're touching the edge and then making a teardrop here. So don't overlap the teardrop on the petal. Just if it's big, just take it from the edge. Are you guys able to follow along, or is everyone kind of, or are you guys doing your own shapes? Because that would be really good too. So you do the same thing repeatedly all across the circle. And for the last circle now, we're gonna do the pointed petal with the same, like with similar starting point. So the starting point for the last pointed petal, the last layer of the pointed petal, is you start in the middle of the teardrops, and you end in basically the middle of the outermost line. And similarly to the previous one, you can basically run an imaginary line from the top of this pointed petal going outward, and you would end up at like a middle point in the last line. And then you do the same thing. You would make the S starting from the top of the teardrop and then connecting it to the reference point, and do the same thing on the other side. I love the shape of this this petal. Like it kind of makes it very flowy. The whole mandala very flowy. So you're just going to continue this process for the whole circle, for the whole outermost circle, and you could end it like you could end the skeleton here, or if you want to go like a step further, or if you just want to kind of put one more layer to it, you could do another teardrop here. So just to give it kind of another layer. I feel like the best way to get the full benefits of this drawing practice is to kind of set the mood. I would say kind of focus on those 5 senses of sight. So like you're looking at this mandala. So when you're drawing it, you're looking at it. So that kind of covers the sight. Try to maybe light up a scented candle, and that will help set the mood of the whole practice. And maybe listen to some nice music, like anything that brings you joy. It doesn't have to be like the stereotypical calming music. It's basically anything that brings you joy, and you kind of mix it up with drawing this, smelling something that you like, hearing something that you like, you touching the pens and the paper and everything. So that will kind of work as well. And I feel like that puts you, like that is something that I do on a regular basis. Obviously I don't have all of that every time I draw, but once in a while when I really need to de-stress, I put on a nice candle, put some music on, and then I'm just drawing. And sometimes I don't even realize like how many hours would have gone by. Maybe make yourself a tea or something that you like to drink, and that can cover kind of the taste part of it and engage all your senses while practicing. And I feel like that will reap the most benefits out. Well, thank you, Ananya. I don't know if you, we're already over time. I can, so this is basically like this is like the backbone of the mandala, and then each layer that you made, you can make it more and more detailed. Now I'll show you guys an example of what I did and kind of explain how I went along, and you guys can do it yourself. So what I did was, like, I have this obsession of doing a double line on every layer. So what I did was I kind of went through each layer that I had drawn as the skeleton and made a double line around it. I think that that kind of adds a level of detail to it, which I feel like looks very beautiful and looks very calming and looks very intricate. So you guys can do that if you want. I drew like those double lines, and then I basically filled in each shape with a particular pattern. And basically just make sure that you're doing the same pattern in each shape, like you're doing the same pattern in each of the shapes that you decide. Some people do practice like different shapes, but I feel personally believe that like if you have the same pattern, it kind of you get to practice the same repetitive movements, and it looks nicer as well, I feel. So this is kind of the example of what I was drawing, and you guys can practice that based on, oh, thank you, Kira. you guys can practice that based on the basic shapes and the basic patterns that the basic patterns are here. Wait. So these are some of the examples of the patterns that you can draw in each of these shapes, and that can give you like a different design every time you draw. I'm not too sure if you have time to finish the whole detailing part. So what I can do is I can send you guys the worksheet. I don't know if I can, I'm gonna close the presentation and I'm gonna see if I can attach a worksheet here. I don't think I can. But if you guys want this worksheet, let me know and I can, or maybe take a picture of it. Actually, yeah, you guys can take a picture of it. Let me focus on the screen, and yeah. So take a picture of this, use this as a reference if you want. If you want like a PDF copy of it, let me know and I can send it to you personally. And yeah, I think that's it in terms of some of the basics of mandalas. There's a lot of ways you can modify it. You can draw it in different shapes, like the traditional way of drawing it is in a circle. These are some of the examples that I made as well. It's just something that I made a few years ago. But you can draw it in any shape. It doesn't have to be a circle. And basically just experiment with different patterns, different layers. I would say that just the most basic shapes that you need are like lines and dots, and you can make any shape with it. So just keep experimenting and you'll kind of you'll find your own patterns. So I would really love to see your guys' final results, and if you guys decide to color it or something, I would love to see how that kind of turns out. So you can share that with me on Instagram, maybe message it to me, or you can tag me if you're posting it, and I would love to see them. So tag me or like message it to me. And if you have any other questions, feel free to message me on Instagram, or if you want the worksheet, let me know and I can like send it to you through DM or email it to you, whatever works for you. But I think, yeah, that's it in terms of the practice today. Thank you guys so much for joining in. I really enjoyed the workshop, and I hope you guys make this kind of a part of your life and practice it as well. Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Matthews. Is it Matthews? I hope I'm not saying that wrong. Thank you, Ananya. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Lavina. Everyone for joining in. It was nice to draw with you and practice with you today. And let me know if you guys have any questions. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I'll leave my Instagram here in case you guys want to refer to it later. And then this is it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kira, for having me. And I'll maybe connect with you sometime later or on Instagram or something. Happy creating, guys.